I forgot this
Oh,
was a
right.
podcast.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Betsy. I am the person you have been emailing all this time. I am the co-founder of Gen Z Critics. I'm a freshman at Stanford University, prospective economics major. In the summer of 2016, I was interning for the Boston Film Critics Society, and I was doing some marketing work for them. And I ended up meeting Evan Crean, who is a producer from New York. And together we felt like there wasn't enough representation in media and in film criticism specifically. So this is how the whole initiative started. Um, you guys wrote some really, really beautiful essays and reviews for your application. So congrats. Um, Today we are really excited to have Evan Crean here with us today. Evan, let me just look down and read this, is a contributing writer and editor for newenglandfilm.com. He is a co-host of weekly film podcast Spoiler Piece Theater and published author. He's also a founding member and treasurer for the Boston Online Film Critics Society. And Evan has been a judge with us since 2016, so we are really lucky to have him here with us today. I thought we could go around and just say our names, which school we're going to, and um, where you see yourself in 10 years, your favorite movie, anything else you want. Anthony? Okay, so why don't we start with you, Mark?
Oh, cool. Hi, I'm Mark. I'm a sophomore at American University, Washington D.C. I'm a double major in political science and economics. In 10 years, I see myself um, still kind of sad. And my favorite one of my favorite movies, well, Steve Jobs movie from 2015, and probably The Shining.
Okay. Kelly, why don't we go on? Why don't you go next?
I'm Kelly. I'm currently at UNC School of the Arts, and I'll actually be transferring to state next semester, and probably to study either history or communications. I'm not sure which one yet. And then, yeah. I would love to be in some kind of like media or journalism in the future. That's definitely my goal. Favorite movie of mine is Harry Potter or La La Land. I can't ever pick which one, but.
All right. Okay, Jack, what about you?
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm a film student at Columbia College, Chicago, graduating senior. Hopefully in 10 years, I will be, writing for movies or doing something related to film in some capacity. That's the hope. Favorite film? Really am a big fan of the Evil Dead movies from Sam Raimi. Evil Dead 2, I think, is my favorite of the three. So
Awesome.
that's that.
All right, Anthony, how about you? Ooh, hang on. Let me see.
That every time there's a problem with a movie, it's with audio.
You want to try logging on again? I knew it was going way too smoothly.
Oh, like due for a failure.
Hey, can you try talking? Can you hear me? Can anyone else hear Anthony?
No, I think his mic might not be working entirely.
Maybe. I know that when I signed in, I had to adjust my settings. I had to go to the settings area and change.
Was that through Google?
Yeah, there's like a thing at the top of the screen where it's like a gear icon that says settings.
Okay.
I around my inputs, and then that allowed me to the audio to work.
I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
Yay! We can hear you now.
Yeah, I can't hear you now. This is strange.
No, like we can't hear Anthony again.
Can you hear us? No. Let's see.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay, cool.
You can hear us.
Okay, so let's start over. I'm from New Rochelle, New York. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2017. Right now, I'm working in insurance. I'm helping do film production insurance and stuff like that. So it's in my field. But I have a really big passion for writing film reviews and also writing screenplays. I've submitted screenplays to the Austin Film Festival and Slam Dance. And I envision myself maybe in 10 years writing film or writing film reviews.
Awesome. Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Evan. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. So as Betsy mentioned, my name is Evan Crean. I co-host a weekly film podcast called Spoiler Piece Theater. I write for a couple of publications, NewEngland.com and a publication called The Independent. And I'm also one of the founding members, and right now I'm also the co-chair of Boston Online Film Critics Association. So glad to meet all of you today. And I guess I wanted to start with something easy, and just ask how each of you got into writing about film in the first place.
That's a tough one.
I know I did just because like I homeschooled like all through middle school and high school, and so I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was like, hey, I like writing and I like movies, and my mom was like, you should start a blog, and that way you'll have like you can write things, and I was like, all right, and so that kind of started that, and I've like gone back and forth using the same blog for about 10 years, and I've used other blogging platforms, and then like over the years, but it was mostly just because I was bored in middle school, kind of got that started. So
cool. What's the name of the blog that you've been doing?
Well, I mean, I haven't like regularly updated it in a long time, but it was just Last Resort Humor was the name that I came up with. Because it was originally intended to be like a blog with like actual blog posts and things. Because this was back like in 2008 when that was still like a viable thing you could like get popular on the internet with. But then I just started writing movie reviews because I realized I wasn't interested in actually writing blog posts. So
Cool. Anybody else?
Kelly, you can go. I'm trying to think.
I actually haven't done a lot of writing. I've always loved reading, and I've always loved writing, but I've never done it on like a professional or like I don't know, public level, I guess. So that was probably the first time I've ever really written anything like formal. Did I just go out of it? I'm back. But as far as like writing goes, it is probably just like something I've just always done. I always wrote these letters to my grandmother, and that's kind of where that started. But other than that, nothing crazy.
So how I started writing about films was, I mean, I always had a love of watching people analyze films and talk about films and film critics. I was really young, like 7 years old. I would even watch Siskel and Ebert. Amazing as that sounds, you wouldn't think someone that young would appreciate something like that. But since my love of film has traveled with me most of my life, I would always gravitate towards people who would talk about films. And I know those guys were the most passionate and articulate speakers ever about films. And so I went into film school in college. I tried making films, directing films, editing films. I always saw that in the filmmaking process, I didn't strive as much in the creation process, but I did strive in the writing process, meaning either screenplays or also, writing reports. Like we would do film theory, and we would watch, let's say, 8½, and I would do a report on that. And my teacher would say, "Wow, Anthony, this is really great. This is what you seem to really excel in, talking and analyzing and passionately arguing in favor of films or the films that you like." And I want to really tap into that, and that's why I started a blog online. I have a blog called Film Thoughts, and I always write. I always post on Instagram, Facebook, my blog entries, and it's a really great passion of mine. I love showing people just what I think about films, and I realize this is something I need to pursue.
That's great.
Okay, writing about film. I think with all of us, it's safe to say it started with really enjoying going to the movies and watching these things and talking about them with, like in a total non-formal context. For like, I know for me, it started on Facebook because Gen Z, we grew up on the internet, so we would watch movies, go on Facebook and talk about them, and eventually, like, if you had a good debate going, you'd have to do a little more research, and that's sort of how it started writing about film in the sense that you talked about, Evan. In high school, I wrote for the school newspaper. I did this column called The Reel, like a film reel, and we just kind of weekly articles on movies. I wrote about how Shrek was a satire of Disney princesses or Disney fairy tales, and then Facebook. I have a group on Facebook, like 50 or so people with friends from my high school and from you here, and it's called Barbecue Film Club, and I just post a paragraph or two every time I watch a film. It's just the fun part of just sort of talking about stuff, like you said, Anthony, about taking what you've sort of gathered from this thing and disseminating it alongside people who also love movies in the same way you do. So that's how I think I got started. It was just this sort of community, sort of just urge to see which movie was better than what, I would say.
Cool. Yeah. So do things get really heated in your Facebook group? Some heated debates?
Well, there are some movies that are very Did you guys see the trailer for that Natalie Portman dance movie Vox Lux? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I thought the trailer looked good, but I had a friend who's just like, "This looks so bad. It's artsy to be artsy," and I like that sort of disagreement. It's kind of fun. It forces you to think a little harder about what you're watching.
So, as you guys have mentioned, I know a lot of you are aspiring filmmakers, screenwriters. What do you think, or do you think that that interest in film, whether it be writing, directing, how do you think that affects your reviews? Like, what do you think what about that you think gives you kind of a unique perspective in your writing and in your commentary?
I think, especially like outside of like, I guess like film criticism, I mostly do screenwriting. And so I feel like when I approach thinking about films, I'm usually thinking about them from a lot more of a narrative standpoint. And I have friends who are more of like the school of style over substance. And there are a lot of like, we have a lot of contentious arguments over, like this movie's bad or good just because it's like, oh, it's all like visuals and no story. I'm a very like story driven person. So like for me, I feel like that's something I pay a lot of attention to when I'm thinking critically of film is how does the story work, and how do the other aspects of the film work to, tell this story in the best way possible and like communicate what the story is trying to say.
Yeah, I tend to be that way myself. I find that more often I focus on story, and a good narrative is really important to me when I'm considering the quality of a film.
Yeah, I know for me, there's a lot of the focus at my school is on like the technical side of everything, where it's all, and that's actually something I don't know a lot about, like cameras and editing software, that kind of thing. I'm just not as technical as that. And so it has been interesting to learn a lot more about that, because you do see how much that influences like all the parts of the film. The narrative can be affected so much by just like a camera angle. So having learned that, it does definitely change the way that I write about things, for sure.
Cool.
So to kind of jump off of what Jake had said, definitely narrative is a big piece of how to understand films in order to write about films. Although I would argue, if you are a fan of books, if you're a book reader, you could be a really good film critic, because the properties of narrative cinema and literature are about the same. But it really does help if you have a history of cinema, if you know, going all the way back to like the early beginnings of film and through all the genre pieces. If you have a good idea of all that, you can accurately critique films, both positively and negatively, and really get a gauge of what's good and bad. Although I did write my piece when I was applying for this program, that there should be more positive reinforcement in films. There should probably be less angry critiques, more, finding the good.
Yeah, actually, I remember reading that response, and I thought that was an interesting take. I think in film criticism, we are very quick to kind of write and complain and kind of I don't know. It's easy to kind of tear something down, especially when you don't like it. And I think it is important to recognize the positive things even in bad movies. That's something that I try to do. Like I can say that this was bad, but maybe this performance was really good, or maybe this scene was really good, or like I do try to find positive even in movies I don't like. But that said, sometimes it's really fun to just like rip into something. So
that actually reminds me of something. Just to cut in, what Tara was saying with her her review is how scared she was to write film criticism, because it was in many cases someone's life work. Someone spent a lot of time writing the screenplays, however many years trying to get funding. It's such just an enormous process that so many people worked on that it can feel scary to just tear them down with something that you wrote in a couple of hours. And it also reminds me of, I don't know if you guys know that scene in Ratatouille with the food critic at the end, who is the character of all critics. he talks about how ultimately what he does is not as meaningful as, you know, what these chefs do with their work. That they're the ones who put themselves out there with, you know, their soul and everything they love about food, and he's just the one who criticizes without even trying. I was wondering what you guys thought of that if you saw Ratatouille. It kind of made me laugh and made me think about what I do with, you know, my words and my reviews. But yeah, what is everyone else's take on that actually?
Hold on. So, yes, being an asshole kind of gets in the way of creativity. Uh, that's the idea. But I find that um, you don't always have it. Criticism isn't inherently like negative. Like it can be constructive. And if I write a bad screen, like I've submitted screenplays onto Reddit before, and Reddit is mean. Reddit is so mean, and they would comment mean things. They would be like, "Oh, I can tell you're an amateur screenwriter. Oh, you should uh, uh, stick to the non-script writing, the other forms of creative writing, or descriptions are off. The words you use are too weird. You put too many ellipses, you know, and like all that stuff interpreted in very different ways by the creator themselves. Because there's this critic out there who writes for the New Yorker, Richard Brody. He always talks about how you shouldn't just call a movie bad, or unsubstantially just say, "Oh, I hated that movie. It kind of made me. It didn't tickle my funny." And like he says, yeah, write that in like a bathroom stall. But if you're putting like substantive criticism about art into the world, it can be negative. It has to explain why, though. It has to be substantive, and I think that's the threshold that I should aim for.
Yeah, I think like for me, what I think is a lot of fun about writing film criticism is like trying to understand why something works or why something doesn't work, and basically kind of like figuring out how to like contextualize that in terms of like, what films are being made now, or if it's an older film, like how does that contextualize in terms of like movies that were being made at that time. And, like, especially with like an older movie, how does it hold up now after, such a period of time has passed. So I think it's like, for me, it's fun, like in a very like kind of like puzzle way, like where you basically kind of like are trying to like understand the mechanics of it, I guess is it's like almost kind of like lifting up the hood of the movie and going like, okay, well, this is not working, but if they maybe had done this differently, or and sometimes it's just a matter of personal preference, but I do think it is interesting because I feel like it kind of makes me reflect on my own personal tastes. Sometimes it's like, why did I like this, but I didn't like this movie, when they both, do something very similar, like to that end.
Do you think it should be like the responsibility of the critic to like correct the artist? Like say, I would have done this because
I think like, oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Because I honestly don't agree. Like criticism is, you can criticize, but ultimately the artist holds the expressive aspect of. I don't like it in film class when students say, "Oh, I didn't how that was done. I would do it this way." I don't think that's the critic's responsibility. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's like using like language like that, where it's like, it's very like, you should, or you like. I have a lot of professors that are like, they make sure to call people out when they say things like that. Oh, you should do it this way. Or like, oh, I would do it this way, because I feel like it's just more like, this is like, I think this would be a good idea. I mean, I always try and think of it like, here are suggestions on like, like these are things that could have helped. I don't know. And so that's generally how I think about it.
So with Ratatouille, I guess, as we were speaking of that movie, they were portraying the stereotype of the stuffy, pretentious film critic. And, there's a lot of truth to, this character and the perception of film critics as stuffy, pretentious, and just mean in general. And if you ask people, does the world need another critic? Most people will probably tell you no. It's just they don't want to hear people rip into things or tell you what's bad. People want to make their own decisions. And then there's this old adage, I don't know how it goes, but it's like those who do succeed and those who can't become teachers and critics. It's usually people who don't know what they're talking about, and they can't do what they love themselves, so they just criticize other people. And that's sort of where Ratatouille was coming from. And yeah. And it brings up an interesting question as to what is the future of film criticism? Is it the Roger Eberts of the world? Is it somebody who both loves films and can really tear into films? Or is it a future of film appreciation and speaking, glowingly about the history of film and what it means to you?
Mm-hmm. I feel like this is kind of related. We've kind of had a lot of different related conversation threads here. But one of the things, Kelly, I remember that you wrote about the importance of being accessible. And I think that is really something that I try to do. As I try really hard to be accessible to people in my criticism and not kind of fit into that like stuffy critic stereotype. Because I think it's important to be able to reach people to talk about film in a way that, is on their level and is honest, and you're still sharing your opinion, but it's not like you don't have to like wade through tons of references and know the extensive filmographies. And I think there's definitely a place for that in reviews. That's one of the things I like about reading your guys' reviews is like seeing a knowledge of film history, seeing commentary on a particular film in the context of a director's filmography. That to me is really impressive because I feel like it demonstrates a knowledge and understanding of film of like, I know where this fits in this person's filmography. I know what they've done before. I know how this is similar, how it's different, how it may be better or worse. And to get back to what you were saying earlier, Mark, about, is it our job to correct? No, I don't think it's our job to correct filmmakers, but I do think we can offer constructive criticism. I think oftentimes in analyzing the movie, it does kind of come out that way. Not explicitly like, this is what you should do, but like, I think there are points where you can say like, I think the movie would have been stronger if X, Y, or Z. And it's constructive and it's criticism, but it's not, telling the filmmaker what to do. But in the context of commentary, it's also just fun. Like we have a segment that we do sometimes on my show. One of the guys, his name is Chris, and we call it Dr. Chris. And it's like, if a movie didn't hit the mark, what would Dr. Chris prescribe for it? Like, what would he suggest changing the story or changing the script that would have made it a better movie?
That's hilarious. Dr. Chris do. At the Oscar speech, I love Chris. He brought me here.
So let's see. What do you guys have questions for me? Anything you want to ask me?
I'm curious, just like I'm always on like the educational, like I just college to me is super important, and so I am just curious, like as far as like studying something, what would you say is writing more important, or would you say like studying something like film history or film itself, like for educational purposes, like what is the smartest route that you would say to take?
Mm-hmm. I guess I can only comment from my own experience. So I studied journalism in college. I did take some film classes. I took a couple. I think it's good to have a mixture of writing and film. I think practically speaking, writing is a more versatile skill that you can use to work in career paths. Whether that be journalism, whether that be marketing, whether that be pretty much whatever. But I still think there's value if you can to studying film history. For me personally, because I didn't study that in undergrad, I felt like when I started writing reviews, I was at a little bit more of not like a deficit or a disadvantage where like, my peers had a chance to see a lot greater depth of films when they were studying. So I do think it's definitely important to get that education, especially in college. And like once I got out into the world, it was like, you have other stuff, on your plate. And so it's difficult to like just sit down and like watch tons of movies, and like you find time for it, but like having that opportunity to be in college and to like watch film and analyze it in depth and talk about it, I think there's definitely value to that.
Thank you.
How did you find your way into becoming a professional film critic? How does one go about that process? Because I think every one of us wants to one day or so, pursue something that cool. Or I have no idea where to begin with how to like get people to know like your opinion and to like go for it. And for myself too, it's very interesting question. I don't know how.
Sure. I think, was it Jack that you said you kind of started out of boredom with writing?
Yeah, I did. I started a blog just because.
That's kind of what happened for me. I was between jobs and I was kind of just looking for stuff to fill the time. And I saw like a Craigslist post for like an entertainment site that said like, hey, we can't pay you, but like, you can see movies for free and get, occasional, swag and that kind of stuff. And so I started writing about film out of boredom. And so I kind of just stumbled into writing about it as like a hobby, and it has been mostly a hobby, but like I think the biggest thing for like kind of getting into it more professionally is trying to find the kind of publications that you want to write for. Like, so you guys read a lot about film. Like, what are the publications that you read and you enjoy? Is it things like, Film School Rejects or Slash Film, or, some of those kinds of places? I would say find the places that you like reading. And, pitching people, it's like coming up with some ideas for articles and seeing if, if an editor will take those ideas. I think it's definitely helpful to know the style of the site that you're writing for. It's looking for maybe holes in their coverage. Like if you're reading and you see that they don't cover a particular genre or a particular type of film, that's also helpful. But I know that it is a competitive field, and it's definitely hard to do as a full-time job. And I honestly don't know a ton of people who do it as their full-time job. They have often do a couple of different things. Some are filmmakers, some are actors, and also do film criticism. I think the biggest thing, if you really are serious about doing it and want to try and do it professionally, is to really come up with like a unique perspective or a unique point of view or a unique style that kind of you bring to it. And I think obviously get out there and write for as many publications as you can, but also try to carve out your own space, like something unique that you do. So for me, that's been doing a podcast. I've been doing that for about 4 years now. And like having a podcast kind of sets me apart and allows, some different opportunities, like doing interviews with people. And it also allows me to, oh, bless you. It allows me to bring in money that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise. So like the show has a Patreon, and so we produce content for that, and so we bring in income from the Patreon, and that's a way that we can do it, and start kind of bringing in money to support our and something we enjoy doing. So I think carving out your own space, having a very unique perspective that you bring to it, and not being afraid to kind of put a stake in the ground and say I'm going to write for other publications, but maybe I have something of my own that I'm also kind of channeling my energy in. And that way you have like another income stream or another way to kind of like make this hobby into something more.
What outlets do you guys look through if you like on your campus or in your area?
Like for like job stuff, like writing, or
like where do you send your reviews? Is it all like personal blogs?
Yeah, pretty much. I need to like look into more freelance stuff. I have a friend who writes freelance stuff, and he recently he found a website that was like paying like a ton. So I'm glad for him. But like he had sent a couple websites my way that are like more like they cover like a lot of like really niche genre kind of stuff. He's into like really weird like Japanese horror and cyberpunk kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So like
horror like outlets will publish reviews
yeah,
because
so
horror is super, super like I don't know, super. What's the word? Cult. Sorry, community.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, it's like yeah.
It has a red following.
Yeah,
You
there's
guys
a
heard?
dedicated.
Have you
I
guys
use
heard? Sorry.
okay. I use Letterbox also a
Yeah,
lot in the
yeah.
blog, and from time to time IMDb, which is it's here and there whether people like it or not. The
Mhm.
viewers or the members of IMDb, they can be a little bit strange because they're very they seem very what
What's your Letterboxd handle? I'll look you up.
I can I can send you that information.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know off the top of my head right now.
You guys gonna Facebook each other?
Yes. But Evan spoke about podcasting just now. That was something I never really thought about. It's an interesting route to go down, I think, for all of us, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because like kids are doing a lot more podcasts nowadays. They're like starting them.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting. There's a lot of podcasts out there, but I mean, I think if you find a unique idea or you have a unique perspective, I think that's really cool. Whether it's a genre of film that other people aren't talking about, or you're looking at films in a different way. I think really the biggest thing is if you're considering starting a show is like thinking a lot about the theme and the audience that you're looking to reach and working on the content because like people understand that like not everybody's audio is going to be professional quality, and I think that's something that you aspire to as you get better practice and you do it more. But really if you have like a strong idea for a show, I think that's like, the biggest thing if you're considering doing a podcast.
Mhm.
Could I chime in on the question that was asked way earlier about screenwriting and
Sure.
critiquing and learning a camera? Because Kelly brought up something interesting, where it was like once you learn how to use a camera and you learn how to use like edit, your screenplays sort of change because there's a certain level of style that goes into presenting the substance the way you want to present it. And a lot of time, bad style can just take all the substance out of something. Like, shoot, I can't think of an example right now. Like A Most Violent Year. I'm not gonna diss this cinematographer because he did do Arrival, but man, that movie is kind of weirdly filmed, and like it just throws me off the entire movie, even though it's a great script. So, yeah, the film kids here, the film students here, like recently got the school newspaper to publish an article saying, "Oh, AU makes us take documentary courses before we can take creative writing or fiction filmmaking courses." And I read that, and I just thought to myself, if you don't know how to use a camera, like, and you're writing on narrative, is there like there? If you're missing a cinematic aspect, like I think it's important that you put shot descriptions in your screenplay, or low angle, side shot, fade two. I mean, fade two is already basic, but I really think like in my screenplays, I'll write down shot like angles. God's eye, uh, continuous. I write continuous a lot, and like I think it really matters to the writing, knowing how to use a camera. Like I think narrative, good narratives are important, but I don't think that substance is more important than style.
I think as with film being a visual medium, it's like you can read a book and get the story just as well. Or you can, go look at a piece of art and just get the style without needing the narrative. And I think that it's kind of our job as filmmakers to kind of say like, so yeah, you're watching this for the story and the characters and stuff, but we're also going to give it to you in the best visual format that we can. So, and I think that with criticism, a lot of times what we're criticizing is like, how well they told that story or how effective it was. So I think that, yeah, like you have to have a command of all the technical stuff if you want all the parts of the movie to come together.
Greed.
So everybody here, what's your favorite movie so far this year?
Like 2019?
For 2019, yeah. What have you seen so far that
Wow, that's an interesting question.
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel?
Captain Marvel.
What
Us is
was
definitely in there. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I was gonna say, would you mind just like elaborate like maybe a sentence or two on what about it has been like resonating for you?
I love that character. I think that it's such a cool, like, to have like the most powerful like superhero ever. I wasn't an actual fan of the movie. I was kind of mad that she doesn't have a theme song. Like they had the '90s music, so I was kind of like, they could have done so much with that, but they didn't. And but I really just enjoyed it. I just loved the characters in it and the camaraderie that they all have, and it was fun. And being such a fan of all the Avenger movies, it's cool to see just like them go back in time. And, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I dug that too.
For me, so far, the best thing I've seen this year, none of my friends liked it, but I really liked Alita Battle Angel. Like, I'm a really big Robert Rodriguez fan, and like, what really like I thought was interesting about the film is that for whatever reason they decided to adapt the manga like it's like a late 2000s YA novel, like it because the comic isn't anything like that, but for whatever reason the movie feels like something that should have come out like in 2011 in the wake of like the success of Twilight, because it's this like really like angsty like teen rebellion romance, and she's like, I'm a robot, but I still love you. I feel on the inside. And it's just the most like weird melodramatic like interpretation of this like action comic. And like it doesn't make any sense that you would like read the comic and go, yeah, we're gonna make this like a weird teen romance. But like it's really kind of like I really respect the decision to just like go full forward with like we're gonna do it just really weird for no reason, like for reasons beyond me, but like it was like really interesting, and like I have no idea what they were thinking like with a lot of the decisions they made in it, but it was just really fascinating because there's not enough movies that are like baffling like that anymore, that like I'm like I don't know what, I mean, it works for me anyway. I mean, all of my friends were like, "Oh, it's really bad," and it's like I understand why they don't like it, but all of the weird, like just like overblown, like melodramatic kind of stuff, I thought it was like really kind of charming. But I seem to be in the minority on that, at least with my friends.
I'm certainly bummed I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but if it makes you feel better, a lot of my friends who are critics really dug it. So
Okay.
Let me provide an alternative to Robert Rodriguez.
Mhm.
Steven Soderbergh. He made a Netflix movie this year called High Flying Bird. It's
Oh,
about
that's the
it's about the NBA, and like the writing is incredible. It's written by the playwright who wrote the source material for Moonlight. He made a Netflix movie. Yeah, so yeah, the movie's great. Wow, there's no basketball in it, by the way. It's just people talking about that. It's love dialogue. I just love dialogue.
I love Steven Soderbergh too. He's
I
just
love Steven Soderbergh.
such an incredible filmmaker, and
Yeah,
from a visual perspective, like, oh, man, even some
yeah.
I feel like underrated, like Haywire. I always really liked Haywire, and I feel like that was a movie that like nobody talks about of his.
So I watched a couple of films in my film class that weren't released this year, but that sort of changed my view. And I think speaks to your point, Kelly, about like how much do you think someone needs to study film in order to write about it? I was kind of the opinion that you don't really need to study it. And then I took my intro to film course during my winter quarter and saw Do the Right Thing, which just blew my mind. What else did I see? We saw Roma at the very end of the quarter to talk about different modes of distributing movies and how that changes your viewing experience. So yeah, loved Do the Right Thing. We watched Breathless, the French New Wave movie too. We watched Chungking Express. I don't know if any of you guys have watched that. And with Chungking Express, we actually talked about how how much easier it is with for American filmmakers to have an audience who thinks that they're sort of fresh and new, even though they're taking from these international filmmakers who aren't as well. So I don't know. I don't want to say that you have to major in film necessarily, but I think that film courses can really give you a grounding that is just really useful. You know, I don't think you can understand the controversy about Green Book's success, for instance, without, maybe having watched a Spike Lee movie and seeing how those movies are so different.
Oh no, don't compare Green Book to Spike Lee's movies.
Right, exactly.
Ooh. Ooh.
Like I think kind of on the point of like, do you need to like take film classes to really write better film kind of stuff or work in film? I don't know if I would say that necessarily, but I think it's important to at least like have like a experience a broad range of movies, and at least make an effort to like watch every now and then like older films just to kind of get the more historical context. Because I think that like sometimes when, especially like with movies that are like big milestone kind of movies where like a lot of like Akira Kurosawa kind of things, where if you see something where you're like, oh, okay, I see why everybody does this, like especially like Rashomon, like the telling a story from like different perspectives kind of thing, that's like a trope in and of itself these days. And when you can kind of see like, oh, that's where it came from, you can see it everywhere, and you're like, oh, all right. It's, I mean, not even necessarily just for like, just to like get better at writing, but it's just kind of fun to like see like, oh, that's where it comes from. So like for me, that's why I really enjoy watching older movies, is just to kind of go like, I finally understand that reference in that one thing I saw one time.
Anthony, we haven't heard from you. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, I'm sorry, because I felt like I jumped in too soon earlier. I didn't want to do that. So my favorite film of this year so far has been Jordan Peele's Us. I love that he is the new modern Alfred Hitchcock. It's meant to be for him. I'm really happy for that. And I'm interested in seeing what else comes out this year, because this looks like the best slate for films I've seen in a very long time. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Martin Scorsese, Greta Gerwig is coming out with Little Women. It's just, it's going to be tough to say what is my favorite movie this year. There's a lot of good ones coming out.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Are you guys fans of like sort of classic, like would you guys go see a Scorsese film like in theaters? With
Yes.
able to go with a friend?
No, by myself, so I can concentrate. It's Scorsese. It's Scorsese. You got to pay attention.
That kind of leads me to one of the questions I was thinking about today. Like, what is your guys' opinion about, streaming platforms and streaming films, and like how that relates to seeing movies in theaters? Do you feel like, it's a threat to traditional experience? Can it be a complement to it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I work at a movie theater currently, and so I have a bit of like a bias towards like going to see movies in the theater just because I can. Like, they're free, so I can go all the time, and I love it because I love to sit up close, and I like to go alone because I like to be able to concentrate on things. And the school I'm at now too, they have 3 whole theaters, so any movie we watch in a theater, and so I get really caught up on that. But like with Roma, it was actually really nice to be able to see it, because for a lot of the Oscar movies, like I couldn't go see them because they just weren't playing anymore. So I do like the streaming services, but I think if I had my choice, like I would always see it in the theater, like no matter what. There's just nothing like it.
I would agree. I love going to the theater. It's sort of weird. When I was younger, I would be bummed out when I wanted to watch some like obscure movie, and no one in my family wanted to come with me. But now I've come to appreciate sitting next to strangers. Sitting in a full movie theater and like hearing everyone's reactions.
Yeah.
And I think that you don't get that with Netflix, even though I agree, I wouldn't have seen Roma otherwise. I just really love hearing everyone's reactions and being in like a dark room. I think that is so central. yeah, I'm more classic in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing, at least in the like streaming versus theatrical debate, like I think the theatrical experience is really critical to a lot of movies, and you just can't replicate it watching it on TV. Like there are plenty of movies that I've like watched, you know, at home on my TV or whatever, and I'm like, man, if only I had been able to see that on a big screen, it probably would have hit a lot harder. Especially like a lot of like movies that, you know, have a lot of spectacle going on. You know, like there's a Fathom Events is doing Ben-Hur in a week or so, and I'm gonna try and go and see that because it just would be I would feel weird watching like Ben-Hur on like a like 30-inch TV when I could go see it like blown up. But I mean, for me, I think the other thing like that I'm not as big on with like the rise of like Netflix and a lot of these other things is I feel like a lot of the original content that they put out feels a lot more like it's still not quite there to the quality of like a theatrical release, even when they've like dumped a lot of money into like a movie like Bright or something. It still doesn't quite have the like the feel of like quality that I would expect when I go see a movie in theaters. And it just, for me at least, it feels like I'm watching like a TV movie or something that was like meant to be direct to video. And until they can kind of like bridge that gap, I feel like I am always going to be a little like iffy on like original streaming films. But with like Martin Scorsese, he's got a movie coming out, so hopefully that'll change my mind.
It's on Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like sometime later this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I still prefer seeing films in a theater. I just think you can't beat that experience. Just sitting watching with a whole group of people, having them react, having all of us react together, enjoying it, seeing on a huge screen. But we all are adapting to like the digital era of Netflix, and I think ultimately and sadly that's going to be the future of cinema, is seeing it through your phone or your computer laptop screen. I hope that, you know, in the next 20, 30 years, theater still exists. I mean, it is very important to watching a film. To me, is watching it in a theater.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm definitely grateful for the variety of things that I can see through streaming platforms, including things like Hulu has the Blumhouse Into the Dark series, which is like a horror anthology series, which is like basically like feature length episodes. And I appreciate having streaming platforms for things like that, like, you know, pieces that I wouldn't normally see in theaters or might not have the opportunity to. But I agree, there's something really special about seeing a movie in a theater. It's the atmosphere, it's being in an audience, it's like sitting in the dark without distractions. I think one of the really fun things too, Jackie was saying about going to see Ben-Hur, I think it's fun to take movies that you watched a lot or that you really enjoy. We'll take Evil Dead 2, one of your examples, in the theater when you can. In Boston, we're really fortunate that we have a lot of theaters that play repertory films. So like I saw Evil Dead 2 at like a midnight screening on the big screen, and it was just like an incredible experience. And it's so much fun to kind of like see something on the big screen that maybe you watched on TV growing up. It's like, oh my God, this is like, in some ways, almost a different movie.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate enough being in Chicago. There's a couple theaters here that like, you know, not only like do a lot of like revival stuff, but like a lot of them have them on film prints, which is that adds a layer to a lot of movies, like where just like the textural quality of seeing it on an actual print, I think, can like enhance the experience.
I don't know, dudes. If we look at the way people have been watching movies since since film strips were like came into existence, you see a bunch of changes in terms of where people go to see movies and how they go to see movies. Because like in the 20s, in the silent era, you had these Nickelodeons, you had these institutions where you drop a nickel and you go in, you watch the whole thing through. You come in like during the middle of the movie and you just watch to where you left, like where you came in, because the movie would repeat all day. And then like in the 30s and 40s, I'm sorry, and that just kept going until Hitchcock's Psycho. When Hitchcock was like, when you watch Psycho, you have to come at the beginning and watch till the end. And that's that wasn't a change in accessibility or anything. It was a change in preference. It was a sign that we started to see movies as something more than just movies. And like the theater experience, I love going to the theater, but I don't think that it's inherently superior to the Netflix experience or the Hulu experience. Like I watch True Detective on my laptop, headphones in. It's just as good as if wait, True Detective's a TV show. I would watch that on TV. All right, you guys caught me like downloading
No,
TV
it's okay.
shows. Okay. Anyway, um, so Dunkirk a couple years ago, I really wanted to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX because that's how Christopher Nolan and his name Hoyte van Hoytema shot it. That's and that technology was important, I thought, to the substance of the film
Mm-hmm.
because it's a scale heavy film. It's a different type of film than Fences, So I mean, would you guys go to the theater to watch Fences, or would you be okay with seeing that on Netflix? Because
Yeah,
it's pretty much just talking to people, and like it's I don't think it's necessary. It's about accessibility first of all, because going to the theater is hard, and it's also about preferences, and it's also about priorities and what people want to get from their movie, like
I saw
entertainment,
Fences in the
or
theater.
you want I want Christopher Nolan to hold me in his arms and make me feel scared of Nazi planes, But I don't really want Michael Bay to hold me while he like blows up some giant robots. It's like a way different, thing. What do you guys think?
I think it depends on which one. I think because a lot of times for us, that's the problem is we have like 6 people in our family. Not everyone wants to see the same thing, but there's like the Avengers movies, like those are huge, and like everyone goes to see those. Like there's not, that to me isn't like the other day I got to see Mad Max Fury Road in theaters, which was awesome. And I think that you're right. Like there are certain movies that like you just have to see on screen, and then you can watch like the romance comedies, like all those. Like, that's more entertainment based, I guess. So I guess there's two types of entertainment maybe, and that like one is meant to be like an experience, and like Christopher Nolan always brings these experiential films like that. But I think that like with streaming, it is nice to be able to watch like Pride and Prejudice, on your laptop every once in a while. So.
Boring movie. I hate that movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
I'm so sorry. I don't like it.
Major
Yeah,
disagreement.
I see where you're coming from.
I would say, I mean, it's the visual experience, but it's also for me having it be a shared experience with all these people I don't know. So maybe I'm thinking less about like the visuals, even though obviously I would want to see Dunkirk in theaters, and more about how like, because your your film viewing experience really changes when you watch it with other people. It's almost like everyone takes on this collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And experiencing that and being able to write about that is really important to me. So that's my take.
Yeah, I don't think it's a sense of superiority in terms of watching film on a screen and like on your laptop screen or seeing it in a theater. I just think, it's what people prefer. And I really, I appreciate the accessibility of seeing a film on your iPhone and having it instantaneous and pausing it and doing what you need to do. I think that's a really great feature that we all have now. It's just I don't want one to go away to replace the other. I want both to coexist.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think of Disney Plus? The stream. It took a chunk out of Netflix stock the other day.
I'm not really sure what it is.
Yeah,
It's like there are like spin-offs from Marvel spin-offs now after Endgame. Like they're going to TV.
Yeah,
streaming.
It's like their streaming service, and I don't know. I'm very wary of them because they're like turning into like this giant monopoly because they just bought. It's really concerning, but they're gonna give Netflix a run for their money because they have the entire Disney catalog and the entire Fox catalog at their disposal now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to see it, you got to go through them. So they're kind of twisting people's arms into subscribing at this point, because it's like, hey, do your kids want to see the entire Disney catalog? Unless you've got a library nearby, you got to come through us. So it's like,
Yeah.
It's a little scary how Disney's swallowing up everything.
yeah,
Nothing seems to have their own identity anymore. It's just you're owned by this big blob.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that also has the potential to hurt, repertory screenings too, because Disney is notoriously like strict about letting their films be, re-released or screened in theaters. So the thing that I'm personally worried about is that they're gonna, hide it in the Disney vault, as they like to call it, and kind of not let people experience movies in theaters. Like should be.
All right. Well, we have reached the end of our hour. It was so amazing to talk to everyone. You guys are such interesting, cool people. Thank you so much to Evan for hosting today. It was so wonderful to hear from you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having such a great discussion, everybody. So,
yeah, really cool everyone. So I will send around people's contact info. If you want to start a podcast with someone, that would be amazing. If you want to reach out, talk about reviews or movies, or you have a cool idea, then you guys can reach out to each other. And yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you, guys.